How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be giving you my 5 game changer bike repair tools that I think anyone serious about bike repair, bike maintenance should consider. Now, what do I mean by game changer? What I mean by that is that these tools are either so much better than their other brand counterparts, or they're the only ones that do a specific thing the way that they do. These tools will sort of enable you to do things either more easily or more accurately, or just improve your workflow when working on your bike in a way that I think is worth the price. Now, these tools have a range of prices. Some are rather affordable, some are rather pricey, and one in particular is, I think, a little bit overpriced. But I do think that all in all, these tools have made enough of a difference for me that I can recommend them. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't start with these tools. I added them to my collection as time went on, and you don't need to buy all of them at once. You have to sort of consider what you do most often and then decide whether or not each individual tool is right for you. So let's go ahead and get into our list with 5 game changer tools for bicycle repair and maintenance. All right, tool number 1 is the Wera Hex Key Set. Now, this hex key set is definitely expensive. It's about $35 for the set. You can find good sets for $10 to $15, honestly, which will do 95% of what this will do. The reason why I think this is worth the extra price is, well, there's a couple reasons. The first one, and this might seem silly, is the color-coded hex keys. Now, again, you might say, okay, color-coded hex keys, that's not worth 35 bucks. And maybe it's not. But when you're working on bike stuff, if you're like me, you tend to be somewhat messy. I leave my tools all over the place on the workbench, on the repair stand, and sometimes I just need to very quickly grab that 4 mil, grab that 5 mil, I don't know where it is, right? If I know that 5 is orange, the case is a little tight. If I know that 5 is orange, I just look for orange. There it is. There's my 5. I do the thing I need to do, put it back, I know where it is, right? If I know that 4 is yellow, same thing, right? I know that I'm looking for this specific color, and I can very quickly just grab it, and then I can see it easily. Another reason why I like this particular brand, Wera, is that the individual hex keys are rather long. This is the long handle version of them. And that gives you a good amount of leverage when doing sort of tighter, higher torque applications. In addition to that, the machining on the L end, I guess I'll call it, right? The machining here is really rather good, really high quality. It doesn't round stuff over at all. I've never had an issue with that. And to make things even better, the ball end, and I do think that whatever hex key set you buy should have a ball end because it allows you to sort of get at stuff at an angle without rounding it out. Now, again, you wouldn't necessarily loosen something like that because that will still round it out. But for example, like a bottle cage bolt where it's hard to get a good angle because the cage is there, you sort of hold it at an angle and then you just sort of twist it out, right? These have a little ball detent on them, right? Which essentially grips onto the bolt, onto the hex head, and allows you to hold it at that angle without it slipping out and therefore risking rounding out the bolt. And that's a really, really important feature, I think, because the danger of using ball end keys is that you're going to round them out. So this thing is great. Long handles, color-coded, high-quality machining. I think these are worth the price. Again, 35 bucks is a little bit steep, but I really do think that if you're serious about bike repair and you already have a hex key set, you want something a little bit nicer, or you just want to buy once, cry once, this is what I will get. I use this all the time. It wasn't my first one. My first one was actually this Eklund brand. These are made in the US. These are solid. They also have ball ends, and these are good. These carried me for about 2 years. Never had an issue with them. They're still in great condition. I didn't really have any issues with rounding stuff out. But I do think the color-coded nature of these, the machining on these, the ball detent on the ball end, and also just the case. I think the case is really solid. It closes like this, right? It closes up, and then you can unlock it to open it up like this. This allows you to access them a little bit more easily. The more standard cases that sort of look like this here, these guys, they do work well, but you have to rotate them, which you still do for the Wera, but sometimes it's kind of hard to get the small ones out. Sometimes the big ones are kind of pain to get out. I mean, yeah, it's more compact, but this thing has the same compact nature, right? In that it does close down really small and it locks, right? And then it also, when you unlock it, just folds open and it gives you the ability to access all the keys rather easily, okay? In terms of complaints with this, I really don't have a lot. I think they work very well. My only minor gripe, and it's not really even a gripe, is just that the case is a little tight. Again, I didn't get these all that long ago, so I imagine they will wear down a bit and the case will be easier to get stuff in and out of, but they can be a little bit hard to get out, at least when I first bought them. So, Wera Hex Key Set. This is the Hex Plus model. For me, these are great. This is game changer tool number 1. All right, game changer tool number 2 is the Bursman Disc Rotor Wear Indicator. Okay, so this little tool is essentially a binary go, no-go check or gauge for how worn out your disc brake rotors are. The way it works is you just slide it over a disc rotor, and it's got all these sort of measurements here on the front. I can show you here. So as you can see here, it's got all these different measurements. 1.5 for Shimano, which is when Shimano tells you should replace their rotors, 1.55 for SRAM, so on and so forth for all the different manufacturers of brake rotors. So you essentially just slide it over the brake rotor, and if it slides on easily, your rotor's worn. If it doesn't fit, your rotor's good to go. Now, will this give you the most accurate reading in the world? No, of course not, right? That's why you might use a caliper, such as this. A caliper will obviously give you a more accurate measurement, right? So a digital caliper like this, these actually aren't all that expensive, but this will measure your disc wear in millimeters, right? And you can tell exactly how worn it is, and you know how much longer you have before you need to replace it. This is obviously more accurate. However, you know, for me, I always keep it in the case because this is somewhat of a delicate tool, so I don't want to just bang it around. So I got to take it out of the case, and it just takes more time. Right, it just takes more time. It's a little bit more of a pain. For me, if I haven't checked them in a while, or if I just get a new bike and I'll really quickly check, or if I want to just throw this in my bag when I go buy a new bike rather than going out there with my caliper, just throw this on and I can get an idea whether it's worn or not. Now, this tool is, I would say slightly overpriced. It's about $32, $33 is kind of what I found it for. There is another version of this made by a brand called Lifeline, which is about $16, which is I think much more reasonable. The only problem with that one is that it seems to only be sold in Europe, so you got to pay for shipping from Europe, which I found for about $8 or $9, which isn't terrible. So 25 bucks, but you know, at 25, this one for 30 is a little bit better quality, I think, than the other one, at least from what I saw in the photos. It's really nicely machined. It's not heavy, but it feels solid, if that makes sense. And I do like this tool. Again, definitely not a must-have, but it is nice to have. If you're at all concerned about how worn out your rotors are, this is a really quick and convenient way to check that. So I do like this tool. I think it's maybe a little bit on the expensive side, but it does make my life a lot easier. It's very quick. Check the rotor, you're done. Let me show you really quick how it works. So you get a rotor. Obviously this one is brand new, so it's not going to be worn. At least I hope not. And so what you would do is you would take your rotor and then you would slide it over, right? And so this is a Shimano rotor, so 1.5, and it doesn't fit on there. So I know that this is still good to go. I don't need to replace it anytime soon. And then they have different measurements, obviously 2 millimeters, right? I think these Shimano I think starts at like 1.8 or 1.75, something like that. So like 1.8 just barely fits. So obviously this is Shimano, so that doesn't matter. But the point is that you just kind of look for the one you need, check it out, doesn't go, then you're good to go, keep riding, right? And then once it starts sliding on there easily, then you know it's time to replace your disc rotors. So Bursman Disc Rotor Wear Indicator, or whatever the name is. I like this guy a lot. It really does make disc brake maintenance a lot faster, a lot more efficient. I just hang it on my pegboard when I'm working on disc brakes. I grab it, get to work. All right, moving on to game changer tool number 3. That is the Cool Stop Tire Bead Jack. Now, this guy here essentially allows you to pull really hard to get tires onto the rim. Now, why is this a game changer? Well, obviously, tire levers have been around forever, and tire levers still have their place, and these are obviously much more portable than the bead jack. So when you're out on a ride, whether you're on the trail or on the road, obviously this is what you're gonna have with you, and these work pretty well, kind of depending on which ones you have. If you have cheap ones, they can be a little frustrating. These are the Pedros. These are my favorite. I think these, but you have to be very careful not to pinch your tube, because if you sort of catch the tube on the inside of the tire lever and then you sort of bend it like this to pull the tire onto the rim, then you're gonna pinch the tire, you're gonna pinch the tube, and then, you know, you just wasted your only tube potentially and your SOL. So while these work, they can be a little frustrating to use, and you really shouldn't use them if you can avoid it to put a tire onto a rim. The bead jack, by comparison, is made just for that purpose. So the way it works is you essentially put it on the back side of the rim, then you hook this front part over the bead of the tire, and then you just sort of pull it back like this. And it does a really, really great job of what it's supposed to do. It pulls tires onto the rim, and it avoids the tube because you just hook it onto the tire, not the tube. Now, obviously you wanna make sure the tube's already sort of tucked into the rim, but it will very easily pull it on there. There are certain tire and rim combos that are just a pain to get on. I had an old set of Fulcrum wheels along with a set of Continental Ultra Sports that I could just not get on for the life of me. They were so hard to get on, and I didn't have this tool. And if I had had this tool, I think it would have made a big difference. Now, there are a few limitations to this. This is not great for wide mountain bike tires. I tried using it on my Salsa with the 2.8 tires, and it just couldn't, right? This is not really wide enough to get around that and get leverage. It did work on my Kenda Boosters 2.25s, but just barely. So I think maybe like a 2.3, maybe a 2.4 tire is sort of like the max for this. But for road tires, gravel tires, this is great. This tool is about $15, which I think for the price is worth it, right? A good set of tire levers is gonna set you back $8, $9 anyways. And this, I think, will really save you frustration when you're trying to put some tires on. And it's just sort of nice to have. Again, necessary, no, but will it make your life easier? Yes, I really think it will. Now, in terms of other options for this specific tool, there is a version of this made by Bike Hand, which is a Chinese manufacturer of bike tools. They make okay tools. I mean, they're cheap. Some of them are okay. It seems to be a pretty quality tool. It's actually more expensive. That one's $20. And it does claim to be usable for tires up to 3 inches wide, so it may be better if you're a mountain bike user. But some reviewers have noted that it has broken on them during use. Now, it's gotten a lot of good reviews, also gotten a couple people saying it broke, so I don't really know. I haven't seen a lot of people saying that this broke on them, and this does feel pretty solid in the hand, so I do trust this Cool Stop one a little bit more. You could give the Bike Hand one a try. Either way, regardless, the Cool Stop tire bead jack for 15 bucks, I think is a game changer tool for mounting hard to mount tires, especially wire bead tires. Man, this thing makes those a snap. So check this guy out. All right, tool number 4 is the Park Tool PT05 8mm long handle hex key. I know, it's quite a name. Now, why this tool? Sounds like a basic tool, like why is this a game changer? This is a game changer because removing pedals from cranks can be a real pain, Pedals are meant to be torqued to about 35 to 40 Newton meters, and a lot of times they're torqued on much more than that. This is meant for pedals that have a hex sort of bolt or opening on the back of the spindle, right? So that you can sort of remove them from the inside of the crank, not necessarily from the front. Now, older pedals have 15mm sort of notches on the pedal spindle itself, on the axle, and you use a pedal wrench for that. So you need to have pedals that have this, but most high-end pedals, even just most basic pedals nowadays, use this sort of hex on the back, and it's always an 8mm, or most of the time an 8mm. Sometimes it's a 6, but it really should be an 8 in most situations, and most high-quality pedals are 8. So with these standard hex keys, okay, these are the ones that would come in like hex key kits, right? Like the Eklund one, or even the Wera, which I do like a lot. This is one of my T handles. These are from Klein. These, as you can see, are not that long, right? They're really rather short. So just to do a quick little measurement here. So my shortest one here, this is the Eklund, and this is pretty similar to the Park Tool version of this hex key. And most kind of cheaper hex keys are gonna be this size. This guy here is right about 6.5 inches. My T-handle is about 7.5 inches. My Wera is about 8 inches, and the Park Tool is close to 11, about 10 3/4. Now, why is that important? Well, like I said, pedals are supposed to be torqued down to about 35 to 40 Newton meters. That's really quite a lot of torque, and like I said, most novice mechanics or even mechanics at bike shops will just torque them down as hard as they can because they're like, oh, we want them to come off. First of all, I've never really seen a pedal come off. You know, if you leave them super loose, that's a danger. But you know, I don't think you need to torque them down like a madman, right? Now, obviously, you should use the correct torque spec on all bike components. I think that's important. I will be honest, I never torque my pedals to 40 Newton meters. This is one of the reasons why I like this. So why do I love this tool? Why is this a game changer? I've never not been able to get a pedal off a bike with this tool, okay? The extra length, the extra leverage, and the handle, I think that makes a really important difference too. The handle, as you can see here, is rather ergonomic, and it does give you the ability to really grip onto this nice and tight. By comparison, you know, these skinny ones, first of all, it hurts your hand to really grip it tight. Even then, it's hard to get as much leverage because you can't fully grip the tool. This handle makes a lot of difference, and then the overall length means that you can really put a lot of pressure through the handle of this tool. Those two things together make it so you can get off really stubborn pedals, even if they're seized on there, if the person didn't put any grease when they installed it, or they just over torqued it. Now, again, within reason, but I've never not been able to get a pedal off with this tool. The other benefit of this is that when you're torquing a pedal down, right, again, you should do 40 Newton meters, 35 to 40 for Shimano cranks. I don't do that. I don't torque my pedals down, but I found that if I torque it down with a sort of like average force, you know, like a tight, good and tight push, with this tool, with the added leverage, I've never had a pedal fall off. I've never had a pedal remotely come close to falling off or working itself loose. The threading on pedals, the fact that one is standard thread, one is reverse thread, means that as you pedal, they sort of tighten on there or they don't come off. So either way, I've never had a pedal come off, but this gives me a good solid torque spec without having to measure it, right? With my amount of power. I'm not very strong, but for me, it puts them on at the right torque setting, and they're on there, and if I want to get them off, I can get them off because I know what the torque spec is. It's what I can do with this tool given a reasonable amount of power. So this guy is also rather cheap. It's like 11 bucks. Yeah, it's only one tool, but it's 11 bucks. Trust me, get this tool. If there's one thing on this list that you should get, especially if you rotate pedals somewhat frequently, if you move them to different bikes, if you have a friend that wants to borrow your bike and you know they use one pedal system, you use another one, just get this. It makes your life so much easier, right? Instead of struggling with these skinny ones or these short ones, like, trust me, this is the way to go, okay? Park Tool PT05, $11, just get it. This tool is part of a set actually. There's 3 tools in the set. There's a 6 mil, the 8 mil, and then there's this enormous 10 mil. I do have all 3. I use the 6 mil pretty often for through axles. Obviously, other 6 mils I have would work just fine. Through axles are meant to be like 10 Newton meters, so they're not really meant to be all that tight, but I do use this one pretty often, again, because the handle is nice and comfortable. The 8 I already talked about, love this thing, get it. The 10 I don't use very often, but when I need it, I love it. For crank bolts on like the SRAM dub crank sets that are 40 Newton meters and 10s, a lot of new crank bolts use the 10 millimeter size. This thing does give you a lot of nice leverage and it can really help get something stubborn off. So, but this one is definitely the least useful, I would say, followed by the 6, which is useful but not super necessary. But I think the 10 is where it's at. Like I said, I would get this thing. All right, the final tool, tool number 5, game changer number 5. Now, brace yourselves. This is overpriced. I will admit it. I love Park Tool. I think Park Tool makes excellent tools. They make excellent repair videos. They're a great company. This thing is overpriced. I'm sorry. I have to say it. okay? It is the WH1, the Wheel Holder 1, okay? So the Park Tool WH1 Wheel Holder 1, there's two models in this range. They have the WH1 Wheel Holder 1 and the WH2 Wheel Holder 2. The one is this one, it's the more expensive one. It is an eye-watering $118. That's right, $118 for some metal that's been bent with some holes in it. I know, trust me, I feel slightly ashamed for having bought it. But, as much as I hate to admit it, this thing is awesome. It really does make your life easier. Is it necessary? No, definitely not necessary. But it makes certain tasks so much easier, to the point where I did spend $117 on it. Now, I had some gift cards on Amazon, and I was like, you know what, I wouldn't buy it otherwise. I have gift cards, I'll use it. Would I still spend $118 on it after having used it for a while? Yeah, I would. The WH2, the cheaper one, I think is $64 on the WH2. Definitely a little bit cheaper, but that one requires the use of a vise. And if you don't have a vise, vices are good ones at least are more expensive than $100, and even cheap ones are at least 40, 50 bucks, right? And it doesn't, the WH2 only has the sort of forward position and the horizontal, the vertical and the horizontal position. It doesn't have this diagonal one, and this one's the most useful, I think. So let me show you real quick how it works. So essentially, it's a wheel holder. It does what it says it does, right? It holds wheels at different angles and allows you to do different maintenance tasks, okay? Now, it works with both quick release and through axle. For quick release, you just essentially put the quick release into these slots as if it were like your dropouts, and then you tighten it down and it's in there. The downside of the quick release, I will say real quick, is that if you're trying to do cassette work on a rear wheel, you're not gonna be able to do that with quick release because the quick release skewer blocks your tool from getting in there, right? Unless you have one that kind of goes around the whole thing. They do sell those, but most of the time it's kind of unwieldy and hard to use. So that might be a little bit of a limitation of it if you use it with quick release wheels. With through axle wheels, that is not the case, and this is really better for through axle wheels. So what you do is you take this little axle here, and you can choose where you want it, right? You have this diagonal setting right here. You have this this vertical setting right here that sticks it straight out, and then you have this guy here which sticks it straight up, right? Depending on what you're doing, different settings might be better for different things, right? Then you have this little like crescent moon piece right here that works as a washer. I still haven't figured out if it's supposed to go in front or behind. In front makes more sense to me, but it works on both sides. But either way, you just slide it down, and then you tighten it down from the back, give it a little twist, and there you go, okay? And then with it set up like this, you can slide a wheel onto here, and you can do whatever you need to do, right? Now, if you're doing like disc rotors, then this sort of angular position is great for that because you can clean a rotor, you can remove a rotor, replace it. Even cassette work, right? You can hold the wheel here, put on a cassette, take off a cassette. It works really well. Vertical position is good too, for kind of the same reasons, but for me, I find the diagonal one is the one I use the most for most things. I haven't really found anything that the vertical one's really the best, except for maybe putting tires on, so you don't put kind of a strange torque on your hubs. If you put it in the vertical slot down here, I find that to be a little bit better for you know, putting a tire on, just a little bit safer, I find. So that guy's good for that. And then the horizontal setting up here. Well, I guess, I mean, this thing comes out vertical, but the wheel ends up being horizontal. The top setting here, I like this for after I set up a new tire tubeless. Slide the tire on, give it a spin. It helps kind of distribute the sealant along the bead, flip it over after 10 minutes, spin it, right? Obviously you can use a bucket for that, but it's nice for this too, right? And also if you really want to, you know, if you've got to get like a stuck rotor off or stuck cassette off, got to put some torque in through it, then this setting I find to be pretty good for that. Although the front setting would also be good where you can kind of hold the wheel with one hand and then put torque through it with your other hand. So the WH1 comes with different adapters for different size through axles. So the standard rod here, the standard axle is for a 12mm through axle, which is commonly found on road bikes, gravel bikes. Then if you slide, and there's a little like onboard storage right here in the back. If you slide this guy on, this allows you to put on 15mm through axles. So for boost mountain bike front wheels, and stuff like that. You just slide it on and you're good to go. And you can even slide on this guy here for 20mm through axles, which are used for downhill, like 40mm forks. So got plenty of options, right? You have different through axles, quick release. You can even use like bolt on, right? For like fixed gear and single speed, you just bolt it down. Is it worth $118? I don't know, but it's really good at what it does. And I haven't found an alternative. This is one of the tools where I was kind of like, yeah, I love you, Park Tool, but I'm not gonna spend $118 on this. And I looked around for like a knockoff or someone. I mean, it's just a couple pieces of steel, but it's the only one, and it's really good. So, is it worth it to you? I don't know, right? Do you do a lot of work on bikes? You have a lot of different bikes with different size wheels. Do you change a lot of tires? Do you replace cassettes and brake rotors often? If you work in a shop, or if you do like sort of like a side gig, like, you know, you fix people's bikes in your garage for money, like, it seems worth it. I will say that. Overpriced, yeah, but it is really nice. You can attach it in two ways. So it has these holes right here at the bottom, so you can permanently screw it down onto a workbench like this, right? And then you have this sort of lip on the front that sort of hugs the front of the workbench, and then this stabilizer piece on the back to keep it stable. And once it's on there, it's really snug. It doesn't move around. Or with the flat part here, you can take a clamp like this, and you can just clamp it onto a workbench temporarily. Right now I'm doing that just because I haven't figured out exactly where I want it. But I will eventually just screw this down or bolt it down, because I think that's gonna make it a little bit more stable. And the annoying thing with the clamp is that depending on kind of the way your workbench is designed, with mine stays at a little bit of an angle. And so when I have a wheel in this position, sometimes the spokes hit the clamp and the wheel won't spin. So that's a little annoying. But that's not necessarily the fault of the tool. That's just me using it with a clamp. But anyways, Park Tool WH1, overpriced, yes. Game changer, unfortunately, I think so. I really think so. I do like this tool a lot. I wish it were cheaper, but you know, until someone comes out with something else, or maybe Park Tool drops the price, who knows? I haven't found another tool that does what this does. Obviously, you could use a vise, you could just hold it. Now, granted, I just bought this tool in December. I've been working on bikes for years without this tool, and I've been just fine. You don't need it. But it will make your life easier, and I do highly, highly enjoy using it. All right, so there you have it, guys. Those are my 5 game changer bike repair, bike maintenance tools. Do you agree with my list? Do you think that these tools are game changers? Do you have them? Have they made your life easier? Do you think I'm totally off and these tools suck and no one should buy them? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know. If you'd like me to do more tool videos, maybe like a beginner toolbox, worthwhile upgrades, tools you should buy the cheap versions, tools you should buy the expensive versions, stuff like that, let me know down below. Are those good video ideas? Would you watch that? Is there anything that you would like to see from the channel? Please let me know. Either way, I hope this video was informative. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was enjoyable. Thank you all for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I would really appreciate it. I'll catch you on the next one. See you later.